You are listening to the REI Mastermind podcast. Join JD as he chats with industry-leading real estate experts and professionals. We learn from their experience and uncover the strategies to their success that we can implement into our own businesses, and we can drive immediate results today. They share their experience and wisdom as we build a foundation to our own success. This is the REI Mastermind Network.
We have a treat for everybody here today. John Martinez has joined, and if you haven't followed John, you're really missing out because, John, I follow you on Facebook, your YouTube channel. The amount of free content that you give out is absolutely awesome. In fact, it seems like you're posting on a daily basis. But what John does is that, first of all, if you haven't listened to John, I'm going to tell you right now, you're talking to motivated sellers. You're probably doing it wrong. And John is the process that we leverage. And I really appreciate your time, John. I can't say enough about some of the sales strategies and tactics that you give out to people.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here.
So, John, I was hoping that we were going to do something a little different today. And we're going to possibly start from like at the very beginning as people are considering even doing some marketing when it comes to real estate investing, and then how they talk to the first person to, we learn from time and time again, you can't make a brown apple green. You can't make we don't want to try to convince anybody of anything. But we also are getting a lot of tire kickers and everything too. How do you weed some of those people out? How much time do you spend with some of these people? But I've always been perplexed a little bit myself, and I've tried a little strategy of my own, trying to use some of your strategy in some of my mail marketing, sure, to see if some of that type of stuff would work. And have you found any strategies or tactics associated with yellow letters and everything that is being sent out?
Yeah, good question. So, I think when it comes to marketing and sales and how they kind of dovetail together, it is just important to realize, I think this is really the biggest mistake some people make with the marketing. I think it's important to realize you don't just want responses, you want the right responses, because you can make your phone ring, right? You can make your email blow up if you want to. But if that puts you into a position where you are just wading through endless amounts of unqualified sellers, unqualified prospects, you're not doing yourself any good. So, I think when it does come to marketing, the messaging has to be right. You have to be speaking to the pain points of your ideal client, right? The ideal motivated seller you're looking for. If you don't do that, for example, if you use strategies, kind of scare tactics or things like that just get the phone to ring, you're just going to end up talking to a lot of people you shouldn't be talking to, upsetting a lot of people you shouldn't, should never be upsetting people, wasting time and probably missing out on the deals that you could have had because you're so wrapped up into activity that you forget to realize there's good activity and bad activity. And I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that was the first thing that really came to mind.
Mm-hmm. No, that does answer the questions. In fact, part of me wants to think that I'll kind of give you the breakdown of what I did here. And I expected a better response than I did. But before we do that, this is just a taste of what John can provide. And I want to point everybody to your upcoming boot camp, which is on June 7th and 8th. And where can they find more information regarding that specific boot camp, John?
Yeah, the REI Sales Academy.com is our website. Also MidwestRev.com. It takes you to the same place, but all the information's there.
Yeah, and that's a great place and a resource because I know that you have links to all of that content that you give out on a regular basis as well. So the mailing I sent out was actually saying, you basically, what we do. We buy distressed properties. We're not a good fit if you don't fit into these categories. Mm-hmm. I got one phone call from that mailing, and it was a marketer telling me they liked my mailing. So I think I went too far.
You might have gone a little too far. I think, when it comes to messaging with the marketing, I think there's just a couple things that are really important. Number one is just letting people know what you do. I don't think you have to overthink it because it's really a top of the funnel activity. You're just trying to bring in some leads that could be qualified. And then you'll vet them out later, if you take a call or start speaking with someone. So just we buy houses, right? I think we buy houses, we pay cash, that type of stuff is really, really effective. Now, most people do that. I think what a lot of people miss, and as far as, where training can kind of come into play, I think what a lot of people miss is they might know you buy houses, but if they don't know what the process looks like and what the commitment level is if they call and what to expect, that's going to keep a lot of people from taking that first step. Mm-hmm. So I think when it comes to marketing, just that very simple, we buy houses type of messaging is extremely effective. But if you add something like, hey, if you give us a quick call or shoot us an email, takes all of 5 minutes to get the process started and just let you know what we might be able to do for you. Doesn't mean we'll buy your house, doesn't mean you have to sell your house, but we should be able to have a conversation and figure out if this is potentially a fit, right? Just kind of relieving some of that stress of, hey, I'd like to call, but are they going to keep me on the phone an hour? Do I have enough time set aside? What happens next? So just kind of relieving those anxieties and fears and saying, hey, if you reach out, it's really simple and easy. It takes 5 to 10 minutes to kind of work through the initial conversation and figure out, is this potentially a good way for you to sell or not? If it is, great, we'll talk about next steps. And if not, no biggie, we knocked it out in 5 minutes. So I think that is the missing component I see in a lot of marketing, is that taking down that wall so people feel more comfortable reaching out.
Yeah, you bring up that quite often, the concept of setting the stage, letting them know that it's going to be X amount of time. And even when you start to hand it off to whether you're going to go to meet them in person, it's just that constant reminder of how long is it going to take, just setting those expectations. How important is that?
It's extremely important, because if we just, you don't have to be in sales to just look at your own life and realize if you don't know how long something's going to take or what's going to happen, we get scared and we don't take action, right? It's like, I'll give you 1,000 examples. Haunted houses. We all know haunted houses are fake, right? We all know there's not really ghosts and goblins and monsters around the corner. We know it's people dressed up, and we know there's no danger. We're not going to get hurt. But because we don't know what exactly is around the next corner and when someone's going to pop out, it scares us to death, right? When we don't know what's going to happen, even when we know we're in no danger, it's really, really scary. Another example, right? If a friend was to text you or call you and say, hey, can you do me a favor? Most people wouldn't immediately go, yeah, absolutely, anything. Just name it. I don't care when it is, what it is, how much it's going to cost me, just go. The next question is going to be, what would you like me to do? What's going on, right? So the key here is, if we just look at our own lives, people just don't move forward. We don't take a next step. We don't feel comfortable unless we know what to expect. I think the ultimate example of this is, because this is my personal pet peeve, so it's the best example I can think of. My wife doesn't do this anymore, but I used to get the random text message that's like, hey, we need to talk. And when you don't know what we need to talk about, that can be just like soul crushing. Like, is something going on? Is this serious? Is somebody hurt? Is there trouble in the relationship? It could just be like, hey, do you want grilled cheese or mac and cheese for dinner? As simple as that. But when you don't know what to expect, the point is, people get filled with anxiety and fear, and we get scared to do anything. So setting the stage is critically important. Just always let people know what to expect.
Sure. So, a lot of the people that we talk to are they're likely dealing with something, some sort of pressure somewhere else. Is this like one of the keys, setting the stage like this? Is that some of the reason, some of these people might finally come out of their burrow? They typically want to bury their heads in the sand, and they want to try to avoid anything and everything associated with their problems.
Yeah, absolutely. A good investor or acquisition agent or salesperson's job is really to do one thing and one thing only, and it is to facilitate the most open and the most honest conversation possible. Now, there's a couple things you want to talk about in that conversation, but that's it. If you're really good at allowing, at kind of setting up an environment where people feel comfortable just telling you everything that's going on, guess what they're going to tell you? They're going to tell you exactly how to sell them. They're going to say, here is what I need. Here is what I'm dealing with that I don't want to deal with anymore. Here is where I want to go and what I want that to look and feel like. And they're also going to tell you, hey, obviously I'm motivated, but here's all the things that have been keeping me from taking action. When we talk to motivated sellers, it's not like they've been motivated for one day. Usually they have, just like you mentioned, they've been dealing with something for a long time, but for one reason or the other, they haven't taken action. So when you have that extreme, open and honest conversation, you can determine quickly everything someone needs to hear and all the ways you need to structure a deal or share, about what you do in order to make them feel comfortable with moving forward. And then also uncover any concerns they have, any roadblocks, any speed bumps, anything that'll keep them from moving forward. And that really, really increases your odds of closing deals.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I have learned pretty quickly, John, is that since implementing some of the strategies that you've talking about, not only many, many times I've found that the sellers are verbalizing their troubles to me for the first time. They've never faced it head on, or they've never admitted it out loud.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think it's a very important point, because lots of times people know they have issues, but like you said, until they start to unpack them, until they start to verbalize them, until they start to put it all out on the table and really see the size and scope of their problem and the impact of their problem, how it's affecting them or family members or whatever, depending on the situation, until they realize that, of course, we want to understand as investors or acquisition agents or salespeople, but until they understand, they really don't feel the full force of their motivation. They really don't feel the urgency to take action. And it's normal, right? If we're ever in stressful situations, most people try to escape. We just try not to think about it until we have to think about it. And that's why most people just kind of sweep it under the rug. And when they verbalize it for the first time, a lot of times, Jack, this is the first time that they are really seeing the true size and scope of their problem. And then they feel this incredible urgency to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. So, I was hoping we could start at the very beginning here when the person is calling in for the first time, whether they're kicking the tires or not, because, we have a lot of newer to real estate investing listeners. And frankly, some of the basic questions that I get asked is like, what do I say? So I was hoping we could maybe spend a little time giving them like a little script, if you will, as to how to deal with these people.
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what to say and kind of some KPIs or things, kind of parameters to try to stay in. Number one, a lead intake call, it's not a sales call, right? It's meant to do one thing. So you got to have the mindset of, I'm really just separating qualified from unqualified prospects. Mm-hmm. So just keep that in mind. We don't have to convince anyone of anything. We are just looking to see, is this person worth spending my time on? Is this person worth taking through the rest of the sales process? So that's the goal. So we have to understand the goal, number one. Number two, a quick KPI, the best teams I work with. So, teams that are just really systematized, that do anywhere from 50 to 60 to 70 deals on a monthly basis, which means you've got to be dialed in tight, right? You got a lot of people sitting in different seats. Training is extremely standardized. It's tight. It's a tight ship, right? Those calls, usually their goal is, I want you on the phone with every lead. If they might be halfway qualified, right? Not if you pick up the phone and they say, I don't own a house, I have nothing to sell, you're not going to stay on the phone with them. But if they could be qualified, the goal for all of my top clients is, I want a double-digit phone call. I want 10 minutes to really scratch the surface, fully qualify them, and just touch a little bit, just enough on their situation we talked about increasing urgency to take action a second ago. Touch just enough on their situation to make them feel a pull, a drive to take some type of next step. So as far as scripting goes, again, setting the stage is super important. You can take these words and use them if you want to. If I was taking a lead call, and you obviously modify this however you want, it'd probably sound like this. Hey, thanks for calling in to We Buy Houses. Usually people who call in want to know what we do, how we do it, how much we pay for houses or their house and that type of thing. Did you have those same types of questions? Hey, awesome. Listen, this is going to take 5 or 10 minutes just to run through some basic questions. Love to just find out a little bit about your property. And then we could start getting an idea of what we could possibly pay for your house. Do you have 5 or 10 minutes available to just shoot through some quick questions? Great. Listen, at the end, if we think we might have a fit, we'll go over potential next steps. If not, hey, it's 5 minutes down. At least we figured this out together. And that's a really good start, right? To set the stage. Now you can make that 30 seconds, 15 seconds. You can modify it, but I really just wanted to tell them what to expect. Now, if you don't do that, and you'll see this if you don't do it, you're going to start asking 3 or 4 questions and get shut down. Hey, how long is this going to take? Hey, why so many questions? I just wanted an offer, right? So you've got to set that expectation. If you don't, you'll feel that pushback. It will happen if you take enough calls. It'll happen consistently. So set that stage. And then your only real goal is to qualify the lead, number one. And then number two, just dive a little bit, just touch on their motivation to try to increase the odds of them moving to a next step. So as far as qualifications go, real simple. Do you have a property? Are you looking to sell? And there's, probably 5 or 10 different check boxes of motivation you can look for. Want to move quickly, don't want to deal with the realtor, financial distress, tired landlord. You're looking for any of those kind of telltale signs that you might have a motivated seller. So if you have any of those, usually for me, I'm taking that appointment, right? I don't need them to tell me on the phone. And I think this is a huge mistake. So this is a great tip for new investors. Don't look for someone to tell you on the phone, I want 50% of ARV within 3 minutes. Everybody wants the most they can for their house. Everyone's fingers are crossed that, hey, maybe my house is worth 100, but maybe this is a perfect house for this guy and he'll pay 120 because he wants it, right? Nobody is going to say to you, hey, the house is worth 100, I'll take 30, right? So I see a lot of newer investors and they're looking for that type of motivation on the phone. And if people don't say, hey, I'll take 50% or 60% of ARV, they just go automatically, they're not qualified. Not true. All those conversations typically start, everyone wants 100% or more of ARV, normal, natural. Do not let that disqualify people. You're just looking for motivation, right? And there's some other, ways you can qualify. If you have too many appointments and things like that, you can look for equity and all those types of things. But usually for 80% of investors out there, just some source of motivation is enough for them to go to the next step. After that, just diving into their situation a little bit. Something like, hey, listen, what prompted you to reach out today? I know that neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood. Why are you thinking about selling? And just tiptoe into their motivation. Just get some type of an idea. Even if they just talk about it for 60 seconds, 90 seconds, the way the human mind works, they will be more motivated to take action. We won't dive too deep into that, but that's it. So set the stage. Hey, here's what to expect on this call. We'll just run through some quick stuff, see how it ends. No pressure either way. Tell me about your situation. What's going on? Why are you considering selling? If you hear 1 or 2 signs of motivation, even just one, I would go ahead and set the appointment, right? And that appointment might be extending the phone call, having a longer phone call another time, a face-to-face visit, doesn't matter. But what you would do at that point is set those expectations again. Usually sounds like this. Hey, listen, sounds like we might have a fit here. That is a house I'm definitely interested in. I don't know yet exactly down to the penny what we can offer on it. Typically what the next step is a longer conversation so I can get to know more about the condition and the layout of the house and things like that so I can get my offer dialed in. Usually, I'm going to pretend it's an on-site visit. We come out, you give me a quick tour. I'll ask you a little bit about your situation so I know how I need to put the numbers together just for you. And at the end of that thing, I'll give you an offer. Usually takes about 30, 45 minutes. If you love the offer, fantastic. We can talk about next steps. Hey, and if it's not going to work for any reason, no sweat. At least we gave this thing our best shot. So that's kind of beginning to end of a lead intake call.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's especially, we've definitely found some success with that, especially when, I'm typically the one who takes the phone calls, and then my business partner goes on site, and he essentially reiterates that time frame that you were talking about too. When I'm setting those type of appointments, so it's just kind of re-anchors them into, okay, we're in this process.
Yeah. And people feel comforted with that. If you say one thing on the phone and then your partner reiterates it, or if you go out there and you reiterate the exact same thing, there's a comfort, right? There's consistency. People crave consistency. And it's systematized, and that makes people comfortable. When they know what to expect, they're comfortable. And just doing that 2 or 3 times builds a tremendous amount of trust and rapport, because guess what you're doing? You're saying you're going to do something, and then you actually do it. So it's great to continually set that stage all the way through a sales call, every portion of it.
Sure. And just to remind everybody, John has a boot camp coming up June 7th and 8th. You can find that at midwestrev.com. I'll make sure to have that in the show notes. But definitely worth the time, and I can't recommend it enough. So one thing that I noticed that you said, and based on just the experience I've had with some of your strategies, I find that I say this quite a bit as well, but you use the phrase, "We'll figure this out together." Mm-hmm. And it's really a great way to position yourself so that it's not combative, I guess would be a good way, because otherwise it could quickly become confrontational.
Yes, I think you nailed it. You don't want confrontation. You don't want an us versus them mentality. And that's really common in sales, right? Because that's really what this is a form of sales. But it's really common in sales where salespeople feel like, in order for me to win, you have to lose. Or if you win, it means I lose. The right mentality is, we're on the same team. Let's just lay this all out and see where the cards, lie, see where the pieces fall. And that's the right strategy to have, because again, that's going to support that open and honest communication. You're going to learn exactly what these people need to hear to feel comfortable going forward. You're going to learn what their motivations are and why they want to take action. Then you can explain how you help do that. We'll help them do that. And you're also going to find out all their concerns and things that might hold them back. So you can go through and figure out if you can help them feel more comfortable with those things, or maybe have solutions for those. We call them deal killers, those concerns or deal killers or objections or whatever you want to call them. I think that being on their side, being on their team is where you want to be. At the end of the day, with your marketing and with a lead qualification call, most of the people you're talking to are going to be a good fit. So then on a sales call, your only job is to help them self-realize, not convince them, not shove anything down their throat, but help them realize, this is a really good opportunity. This is a good way for me to get what I want.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. It's almost impossible to convince somebody to take some sort of action. They have to come to that realization themselves. And it really takes those questions and getting them to open up to really get them to guide them to their own realization.
Yeah, it's almost like a counselor or a psychologist, right? If lots of people go to counseling now. I've been to counseling for various things throughout my life. And what you realize, and it's been very effective for me, and what you realize is they don't tell you anything. They don't tell you what to do or how to do it, but through a series of questions, they help you self-realize, oh, here's what's going on, and here's what I need to do. And that's why the best investors and acquisition agents, they don't tell people what to do or what they should do. They just ask the right questions so people self-realize, you know what? this is a big issue. I need to do something about it. And because of X, Y, and Z, I think this is the best way for me to do something about it. So questions and helping your seller self-realize what's best for them is the key to all of this. And if you do it right, most sellers will realize this is the right solution. Now, you might get some who realize this isn't the right solution. That just means they're not your perfect client. You don't have to do business with everyone. If you run a sales call right, an acquisitions call right, you will have plenty of business. And you don't want to sell people that aren't a good fit, because that's not helping them. That's conning them, right? So you don't want to do that anyways. So along the way, you're going to find a lot that are actually a good fit. They'll self-realize it. You'll close a good percentage of deals, the closable ones. And you'll also find some that you shouldn't do business with. If you did, that maybe you could, and if you did, it was going to be a huge headache or blow up on you down the line. It's okay to realize through this process that, hey, you are not the right fit as well. So I think that's another point that people have to realize, that you don't want to close every seller, because that means you're probably doing business with the wrong people. You just want to be able to identify those that are going to be a good client of yours, that you're a good fit for, and make sure that they realize you're a good fit. The problem is, many investors and AMs go and talk to sellers who are a perfect fit, but they don't do a good enough job helping them realize that they're a perfect fit. And all those deals just kind of wash out the door.
Right. And then what I also noticed is that your strategies has you position yourself so you're no longer chasing.
Right.
And I think that's another great example, is that chasing usually is a form of trying to convince, and we don't want to be in the position of chasing. And I see that early on, especially with newer investors. They get somebody calling in, and they're constantly chasing the shiny object. And that's actually a kind of a mindset change that you gotta learn to step away a little bit.
Yeah, and it's hard to do, because sometimes you really want to convince them, right? You really want the deal. You might be able to see that this is perfect for you and perfect for them. And it's hard to have the mindset of, I don't need this and I don't want to push too hard. But one of the first negotiation books I ever read, back when I read books and didn't just listen to them on Audible, was Roger Dawson's, I can't remember the name of the book, but he's probably one of the best negotiators of his time. He was the Chris Voss of 20 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Most people know Chris Voss now with negotiation. But in Roger Dawson's most famous book about negotiation, one of the lines that always stuck with me in there is, whoever wants it more loses. And there's a lot of psychology and science that goes behind that, but it's absolutely true. Whoever wants it more loses the negotiation, and in this case, usually loses the deal. When you push people, you push them away, right? What you want to do is kind of take a step back so they're drawn to you. So they start to tell you all the reasons why it makes sense to do business with you. The more you push them, the more you try to convince them, the more you want it and you need that deal, really the less likely you are to get it. And again, there's a dozen different reasons why that is when you go into the science of it and the psychology and how this all works. But to just kind of sum it up, you got to chill. You got to relax. You don't want to convince people. You want to just let them discover this on their own. And the way to do that is not pressuring them, pulling back, even just saying something, a little teeny tiny something every now and then, like, hey, listen, if it's a good fit, fantastic. If it's not, no big deal. I like to take it a step further and go, hey, here's how this works. We're just looking for a perfect fit. Out of every 5 people I talk to, maybe 1 is a perfect fit, and we end up buying their house. So if you're one of those 1 out of 5 that's a perfect fit, and we figure that out together, fantastic. If you're one of the 4 that it's just not perfect for, no worries at all. Right? Just letting people know that, hey, I'm not going to try to pressure you. I'm not going to try to make this happen if it shouldn't happen.
Yeah. No, and another way that you've pointed out a few times to release that pressure, and you've brought it up in a couple of your scripts so far, is giving them an option of always saying no.
Yeah. Yeah, they have that option. We know it and they know it. Most salespeople don't accept no's, though. They're taught that, always be closing type of mentality, which is now scientifically proven to be detrimental to close rates. The more times you attempt to close, the less likely you are to close a deal. And it's because of what we've been talking about, the pressure and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you always want to relieve that pressure, and they are in control, right? You're not going to force them into signing anything. So just verbalizing that and say, hey, listen, you're the boss. If you want to sell, if you want to sell your house, my job is to make you the best offer possible and structured in just a way that it works for you and it works for me. If it works for me and you don't like my offer, you're just going to say, no, thank you. And I don't buy a house. My business doesn't move forward. You don't solve your problem. So you're in control. You're going to make the decision at the end of this. Hopefully we can just work through this together. And, if it works, it works. If not, well, that's going to be 100% up to you. So just giving people that feeling of freedom goes a really long way.
Sure. One of the things that you pointed out early in our conversation is that, most people know what we do. And I don't want to discount the fact that what you had said earlier is that most people have some sort of motivation. Otherwise, they wouldn't have called you. I mean, that is the first concept there. And I think we lose track of that. We talk about people kicking the tires and they call just out of curiosity. But more times than not, they know that you would be buying their properties at a discount. And there's likely an underlying reason why they're even calling.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, of course, there are going to be tire kickers. Of course, there's some people every once in a while who just are lonely and want to chat. But the vast majority, they know you buy houses. For one reason or the other, they want to get rid of theirs. For one reason or the other, they picked up the phone or clicked on the internet or shot off an email or whatever, instead of calling a realtor. So for most inbound contacts, there's some underlying motivation. Now, I don't know if that's enough, if that motivation is going to be a compelling enough reason yet for them to do business with you. But you're right. There is something worth exploring.
Right. And another question that I've learned and I ask quite often is simply, why don't you list it with a realtor? And I think what's interesting about that is that a lot of people I've talked to will never bring that up, as if they're trying to hide the fact that that's even an option.
Yeah, but that goes so. That's just proof, right, of what we were just talking about. Of not being afraid to lose the deal. Just bringing up their other options. A lot of salespeople, I don't want to say amateurs, but maybe people that don't have a clearly defined effective sales process, they'll just try to avoid all the reasons why someone might not do business with them, like listing it with the realtor or something like that. And the truth of the matter is if you have things that can routinely stall or derail your deals, you don't want to avoid them. You want to bring them up to see if you can work through them. You want to bring them up to see if you can eliminate them or to see, hey, is this something that we cannot beat? Is this something that's going to stop the deal? Because if you do lose a deal, you want to know why, right? If you do lose a deal, you don't want to be in, if I lost a deal, I'd want to know I lost it because I uncovered this obstacle, this deal killer, and there's just nothing we can do about it. Unless that situation changes, it's no deal. I'd rather know that so I know what to do with the lead than not knowing and then calling every 2 days for the rest of my life going, hey, you want to talk again? I want to know where people are. I want to know if the deal's not moving forward, why? But again, I think it does go back to the fact that most salespeople, weaker ones at least, they're so scared of no, they avoid anything that might lead to a no. They avoid anything that might get in the way of the deal. And I think the really good investors, people who've been doing it for a long time like yourself, realize if something's getting in the way, let's get it out into the open and just deal with it.
Yeah. No, and I'm going to change the subject just slightly, because when I first learned some of your strategies, I was using them in any opportunity I could, just trying to get in the habit and working that muscle. And as much as, let's face it, we all hate role playing and going through all of that stuff. there's a lot of benefits associated with that. But I found that I was trying to, even when I was talking to other salespeople in other industries, I didn't have any desire to, or the ability to, I'm going to use this example. I went to a car dealership and I was looking at cars.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I wasn't really, you're there for a reason. You're probably looking at cars. But when we went for a test drive, I started essentially using some of your strategies towards him. And by the time we got back, I knew how he was incentivized. I knew how important it was for him to sell this car to me. I knew, by the time we got it, I was likely could have gotten the best price possible. I mean, it was interesting that this can be applied in so many different scenarios.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's just communication. If you could what we wish we could do as salespeople is just go into and talk to a seller and say, okay, I've got this sheet of paper. Tell me every reason why you would consider doing business with me, and do one column, and then say, column number 2, tell me everything you're uncomfortable with, scared about, that might get in the way. And if you were able to do that, and people just, you didn't have to have good communication skills, and they would just, tell you everything. And it was 100% the truth. If you could do that, then you could just look at that sheet of paper and go, well, let's go through these together. This is what you want done. Here's how I'm going to help you get there. Here's all of your concerns. Here's how we're going to address those. And then at the end, you'd say, here's my offer. What do you think? Right? It'd be super easy. The problem is humans are complex, especially with strangers, especially with salespeople, especially if they're in distress situations. So you just have to know how to communicate with people so they feel comfortable telling you the complete, open, and honest truth. And that's it. So whether it's a spouse, kids, waiter or waitress, the car dealer, when you know what's going on in their head, when you can take a sneak peek and almost mind read, it gives you a lot of power. And I'm not saying power like you're misusing it or manipulate people, but the more facts you have and the more you know what's going on, the more powerful you are. The more you can use those facts to make a case and to use them in your favor however you see fit.
Right. So to wrap this up, I was wondering if we could chat a little bit about what we're dealing with right now with the pandemic and COVID. And have you seen some of the strategies or the way people are acquiring properties, how they've changed over the past year?
Surprisingly, very little. Now there has been a shift to more virtual, but that shift started long before the pandemic, right? As people would try to, ramp up marketing and have more appointments to run, we started shifting to some virtual appointments. As investors started to have some success in their markets, they started to explore other markets, and it didn't make sense to set up a physical shop there. So they started to explore, virtual. I think the pandemic accelerated that. But, with our clients who are probably 75%, I think we've got about 500 clients currently, investment companies. And I think I would say roughly 75% have some virtual component to their business. They're either doing it all virtually or a portion of their acquisitions is done virtually. And with all of them, it's the exact same conversation. There's some nuances, right? It's a little easier face-to-face than having the conversation over the phone. Some parts are easier over the phone, like the tough questions you got to ask because there is a little separation. The conversation moves a little quicker over the phone. You got to get a little bit creative when you're doing your tour. You got to do a virtual tour and have them kind of walk you through the house and explain things to you as if you were there. So there's some minute differences, but surprisingly enough, 98% of what we see, especially, and I always just use our most successful customers, so we stay in touch with them. They say it's the same conversation. If we're there versus on the phone, even through text message or email, we hit the same steps. We ask the same questions. It's the same thing. Of course, the dynamic's a little different here and there, and there's some unique challenges, but by and large, it's the same.
Yeah. So, well, I want to remind everybody again, the next boot camp is June 7th and 8th. You can go to midwestrev.com. I'll make sure to have those links in the show notes. And the one last question I try to end with is there a question you wished I would have asked you today?
Oh, that's a great question. Let me see. Yes, there is. What I always like to share with people, what I wish you had asked was, do you have to have a special gift to be a salesperson? Especially in RE, we work in a lot of industries, but in real estate investment, a lot of people get into the business not because they want to be in sales, but they want to be in the real estate business, right? There's something about the business and the opportunity and everything that goes with it that is very appealing. And just like any business, you realize sales is a big piece of it. And a lot of people get into it and then realize, wow, there's this incredibly uncomfortable thing or thing I'm not used to doing or don't know how to do. Am I just not cut out for it? Do I not have what it takes? But the truth of the matter is, as some people are maybe a little more, maybe they're a little better at sales naturally, but you don't have to be a natural. You have to just have a process. It's just like accounting, right? There's no natural accountants. There's accountants that follow good processes and procedures, right? Even builders, right? People aren't just, in architects, people aren't just born a natural architect. They have formulas and procedures and processes they follow. And the more they stick to those and refine them, the better they get at their craft. Sales is the exact same. So for all the investors, which I usually find out are quite a bit, that acquisitions is their least favorite part of the job. It's not because you're not cut out for it. It's just usually because the right process isn't in place. So that's what I want to share. First and foremost is, don't let it discourage you. Don't let it push you out of the game. Look for a better process.
No, that's a great way to end this. I really appreciate your time again, John. Again, make sure you head over to midwestrev.com and sign up for the next boot camp.
Jack, it was a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
This has been the REI Mastermind Network. You can already tell that we've made some changes and a few more are on the way. If you are interested in what we have planned, head over to patreon.com/REI Mastermind and support the show today. Financial contributions are always appreciated, along with a like, share, and review. It really helps us grow and reach more people with this valuable information. See you next time, and tell a friend.